Okay. Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to another very nice, exciting session of Read Pakistan. And today I have a very dear friend of mine here with us. It's Birgit Lamm. I'm going to introduce her to the people who are here with us today. And just a brief introduction of Birgit. Birgit has joined FNF in 1993 in Germany. And since then, she has held various positions within the foundation in Germany and internationally. Among others, she served as the director of the International Academy for Leadership, that is IAF, in Gummersbach, and head of the Mexico office. So she has basically, the best thing about Birgit is not just the introduction. It's pretty impressive though. But the best thing about Birgit is that she is a dear friend, and also that she has always been there for Read Pakistan. She has always made sure that, she should stand by the cause. And mostly the cause that she stands by is definitely serving back to the society. Everyone who is here with us today also knows that I'm Senior Vice Chairperson, Read Pakistan. And today we're going to take it up with Birgit Lamm. And I'm definitely sure this is going to be a very interesting session. Birgit, thank you very much for being with us. Hello, how are you today?
Thank you so much for having me, Fatima. For me, it's always a great pleasure to be with Read Pakistan because, as you've already said, I just love your course. It's very much my course, and promoting reading among the population, especially among the youth, I think that's just a marvelous thing to do. So I'm feeling good, and I'm happy here to close the Friday evening with talking to you.
Thank you very much, Birgit. And I know that your schedule is always very tightened up. And the best thing about you is that every time, and I should tell this to the audience as well, that every time that we have ever asked for help and support from your end, you've been there in the conferences, you've been there in the talks, you've been there otherwise, just for me and for Farooq, just to stand by our side. So thanks a lot, firstly, for that. And this is all about you, Birgit. So basically what I want that you should be starting up, we should be starting up this session with you, your story, and your story, how it began with books. And that's how we're going to start it up. So let's hear from you the relationship that you built with books, and how did it all started? At what age did you really, started off your relationship with books and everything? So let's hear it from you then, Birgit.
Well, my story with books actually started in my family. I cannot even remember being without books. So my family is a big reading family, and my parents have a whole house full of books. And the whole thing started basically as soon as what I can remember. My parents started like what's a very big tradition in Germany with reading children's stories to me when I was much too little to read myself. But I can remember my dad and my mom taking it in turns to read goodnight stories to me just to make it easier for me to go to sleep. And those were, of course, children's stories about animals, later on adventure stories. And then I started reading, of course, children's books, comics, everything which was then exciting at that age. But really, it was right from the beginning that I had my parents. I saw them just like that, having a book here, reading in front of me. And I saw them read their books. And then later I started also reading. So it's very much a family affair, which I already experienced from childhood.
That's wonderful, because that's where you actually begin from. Like in Read Pakistan, we tell people that the reading habit actually develops from age 0, which actually even starts when you're not even born. So yes, so you started your relationship with books at a very, very young age, which is wonderful. Birgit, tell us a bit about your organization as well. So I just want you to introduce people who are here with us to FNF. Yeah, just a brief introduction if you want to share that. I think that would be good so that people know, the background that you're coming from, please.
Well, Friedrich Naumann Foundation for Freedom is a German political foundation which was founded in Germany in 1958. And the foundation's objective is to share and promote democratic values among adults, skills training to give people the values and the skills to exercise their democratic rights, and basically empower people to realize their project of life. And that's what we're still doing in Germany, and that's also what we do in 30 offices all over the world. And I'm now privileged to head the office here in Pakistan, and I've been around here for a year now.
Oh, that's wonderful. Yes, I personally know that. But Birgit, tell me, how is the actual experience here in Pakistan? Because I know for a fact that Germany has its own values, has its own decorum, its, distinctions. How about like you telling us how you have actually felt about the culture of Pakistan and, about Pakistan overall generally?
Well, of course, Germany is much, much different from Pakistan, of course, but that makes it also very exciting. When I was offered the job, I didn't really have to think a lot about it because you read things, you hear things, but I always like to see for myself. And I had the opportunity to visit Pakistan in the past as well, 3 times between 2008 and 2010, which were quite challenging times here in Pakistan. But I enjoyed the hospitality of people, the discussions we had with the friends and partners of Friedrich Naumann Foundation. And I always felt if people invite me to come, then it's also safe to come because I know you are great hosts.
Oh, thank you. Yes, that's wonderful. Okay, Birgit, tell us. So first of all, I think before moving to the next question, I want to read a few comments. People are really welcoming you here. I don't know whether you can read these views, but there is Mohammed Disrar saying hello to you, and he's saying welcome to our new guest. Sirat says hello, Birgit, and Zimmel is welcoming you, and then we have Binte Zahir welcoming you. Javeria Evan welcoming you, Noor, Sohail, Mariam Nadeem, and Sirat Rafiq. So we have a lot of people who are saying a lot of good things. They're welcoming you. They're actually really happy that you're here with us today. Okay, so these were the comments. By the way, I think I did not communicate it before, but I think we're going to have question answers from the people that the people who join us in this live session. So usually, what happens is that quickly I'm going to tell you that we're going to also have a few questions from the guests who are here watching us, and we would just simply they would be asking you questions and you would just simply answer to those questions, the ones that you feel comfortable with. So this is going to be the pattern. Okay, so moving to the next question, tell me, Birgit, how has it been, as in when it comes to books, what do you actually think? Do you think that languages are important? Or say, for instance, because I talk to a lot of linguists as well. Recently, I had a small meeting yesterday with a couple of linguists, and the thing that I really want to ask you is that how important is language in reading? So basically, because there are two schools of thoughts. One believes in the language decorum, the other believes in this. Yes, reading is important, and languages are just a tool. I want your own personal opinion because obviously you come from a background where English is not taken up as as a very patent or say for instance it hasn't become a patent language, and Germany is still having German as a language. So please let us know how important a language is and what role does it play when it comes to reading, and how significant it is. I mean, keeping in mind also that there are German writers and you yourself have been writing so many blogs and everything, please.
Well, of course, language is very important. And as you are talking about linguists, I'm a linguist myself. My first degree is applied linguistics, so that makes me a translator and interpreter. And language is actually my profession, my very first one. And language is basically the basis of all learning and education that you can have. Because even if you want to be an engineer or you want to code software, how do you learn it? How do you communicate with each other? So
Yeah.
every learning is based on language. And this is also why at a very early age, learning a language is incredibly important. It's this very basic learning that every child has starting from home and then primary school, which actually determines your educational success in life, no matter about the other financial, socioeconomic things where you're born. But you need to have a good environment where, first of all, your family, where your mum, which is probably the very first person you see, which will communicate with you already when you're not even born, but that you have this contact and that you have a proper learning of a language. And of course, reading is crucial to it. Of course, reading comes at a later stage, hopefully when you're 5 or 6 years old, depends a bit on the school system, but then you already have oral language. And then reading is incredibly important. I mean, that's what all teachers and people who study more about learning languages actually can show you. And there's a lot of empirical evidence that shows you people who read a lot will have a larger vocabulary, they will have a more powerful command of the language, and will be more successful. And they will have a much, much better way of expressing themselves than children who don't. Because at home, of course, you will communicate with what your parents tell you, and maybe your active, let's say, vocabulary will be 500, 1000. If it's very educated, maybe 1500 words. But that's sort of what you're going to use in everyday life. But
Yes.
there's so much more to language, and language also determines a bit the categories in which you perceive your environment and how you learn. I mean, that's also the exciting things about it. I mean, I'm still at the beginning, but I'm also learning Urdu. And I'm really absolutely confused about all the words that you have for family relations.
Oh,
And
wow.
whether you have a grandchild from the daughter of a man or it's the son, it's a different name. And that's, of course, because family relations are incredibly important in Pakistan. You will have, let's say, different types of categorization in different societies. In desert societies in the Middle East, you have incredibly many names for camels. For us, it's just a camel. But I mean, for a person who needs to deal with these animals, it's very crucial to have a very specific name for it. And for you in Pakistan, it's very important to know the family relations. So you have all these incredible names, which really confuse me. But you need to know that. And I mean, reading can help you to understand all these environments and also broaden your knowledge of a language and your perception. And it opens a completely new world to you, and
That's
also the world that you have in your own head. So yes, it is very, very important.
that's perfect. Birgit, tell us, basically, what do you think? Germany has this very versatile, prolific history of reading culture, and obviously, we don't see the same thing, proliferating here in Pakistan. So, where do you think that? First of all, first question first, what do you think that Germany does have a reading culture, and where does that come from? So, just a bit of maybe, just a bit of history and how people have played their role in developing the reading culture in Germany.
Reading culture in Germany is actually a very ancient tradition, I have to say. Just to prepare a bit for this discussion, I also checked a few facts and dates. But there's one thing, actually, the book printing in Europe started in Germany. In continental Europe, the printing press was invented in 1450 by Johannes Gutenberg in the city of Mainz, which is in Germany, and which happened also to be my university. But that
Oh,
was
wow.
500 years ago. And that actually was, like today, a real revolution in terms of technology, because before that, books had been handwritten in Europe. And that was very expensive. Only the very rich were able to buy a book which was copied or handwritten. And also these books, handwritten books, they were scientific or religious books with a lot of calligraphy and nice paintings as well. And they were written in Latin by the religious scholars. So in fact, humble people who didn't speak Latin didn't have access to these books. It was a very small elite. And then in 1450, Johannes Gutenberg invented the printing press, and suddenly it was much cheaper to attain books. And also, that made German, the humble language of the villages, suddenly accessible, and also developed German as a language of literature and a language of writing. So it all started really with a technical revolution in 1450. And from that time onwards, yeah, German literature has become very prolific, and reading is very much promoted at school from a very early age. And I can still remember that when you start reading later on primary school, you go to the fifth grade, you have a syllabus and you have a reading list. And you are supposed to read certain books. There's not a single school that doesn't have a library. Every municipality has at least a public library. And also books are considered cultural goods. So you can see that, for example, that's now very economic. But for example, books, just like flour and basic foodstuffs, have a reduced sales tax because it is literally thought to be food for thought. So flour, bread is sold at a reduced VAT tax rate, and books as well, because we feel not only food is important for a person, but thought as well. And this is why books are really very much promoted. And that's part of our culture. Reading is just part of it. Of course, with the new media, also, let's say the reading habits have changed. People tend now to go more for smaller articles, shorter pieces, maybe not really thick books. But the reading culture is still there, and the latest statistics show that more than 55% of Germans are still regular readers. Not maybe every day, but they have reading as a habit. And this year, 30 million Germans bought books out of 82. That doesn't only mean that the others don't read, because I mean, books are passed on. You might lend or borrow books. So every book has, of course, 3 to 4 readers. So it's still a very popular thing. It's part of our culture. You are introduced to it at a very early age at school already. And it's also by society and by the government acknowledged as a valuable thing for developing your personality. So this is also a long-standing tradition in Germany. Of course, reading is also associated with your level of education, and also we have to say to your level of wealth. So those with minimum wages in their majority, fortunately in Germany, there are not many people who really have to live on such a low income. But the lowest income level does not in their majority read. The higher you go up in the social ladder, also with education and with income, then you do have the majority of people who read. So there is also, I have to acknowledge that, of course, there is a relationship to education and also to income in that respect. But yes,
That
in Germany we still read a lot and we enjoy it.
That's perfect. It's very informative, Birgit, because I think that really plays and paves the path towards success. You've been here for about a year, Birgit. Now, what I would personally like to ask you this question. What do you think? Do you think that Pakistan is going to move in the same direction as that of Germany, that books are going to become more important, apart from what Read Pakistan is doing, but otherwise, because do you see those those germs actually of reading in Pakistani culture, or do you think no, we still have a long way to go? Because this is important. You're a person who would be viewing it from a distance. So for me to claim something, or for somebody else to, who's a Pakistani and into this decorum, might just suggest something else. But for you, you're a person who's a viewer of the whole situation. I really would like to know, what do you think? Would Pakistan be able to improve on these grounds, these specific ones?
Well, we at Friedrich Naumann Foundation Pakistan, we also produce a lot of publications, of course, for adults. Normally, it's not children's books, although we do have some educational material, especially on climate change, traffic, and mobility issues. And when we attend maybe a book fair and present our products there, I always feel there's a lot of enthusiasm. People want to get hold of these books because I feel that a lot of people do not really have access to books. That's maybe for economic reasons as well, because books, of course, are also expensive. I'm a great book lover, so I'm really happy that I live very close to Syed's Book Bank. If I might promote a bit a specific bookshop, but for me it's just heaven to have a 2 or 3 story building just crammed to the top with books. But of course, they also have their price. And if you have people who really need to fight hard to make ends meet every day, then probably the first money goes into buying naan or roti and not into buying books. Because, yeah, the food for the tummy comes first because before you have food for thought. At the same time, I had that enthusiasm that students were really happy to get hold of books. And from the statistics, I know that Pakistanis are not so avid readers. Maybe this is because of the economic situation. It might be because maybe there's no bookshop nearby. Maybe schools, or there are no libraries, and it's just more difficult to get it. And I also understand it's a very young population here in Pakistan. Your average age is 22. So people are very much fascinated by the new media, and but also connectivity issues. Not everybody can all the time access the internet. Only 10% of Pakistanis own a smartphone, because of course it's not only printed books, you can also get hold of ebooks, and a lot of good books, especially the classics, are very often also free of charge. So social media are not always a competitor to reading, but they can actually also promote reading. But I feel, the access and some training should be given to the non-readers. They need to be introduced, and I also feel um, it's not as maybe as easy to appreciate a book than watching a film or a TV show. Because when you are watching a TV show, you sit down, you have your cup of tea, and you consume it. Reading is something very active. But I also feel when I read a good book, and maybe I read it a second time, I read it a third time, I come up with different ideas. You read it in a different way and you get different ideas. So really, the film is here in your head. And I would suppose 2 or 3 people reading the same book, they will have a different film here in their head. That's
True,
also the exciting thing about it. And I also feel it really stimulates your imagination. So once you've mastered this idea, you really sit down and you let this book really get into your head, into your mind. You can actually talk to the book with your mind. Then I feel it creates a whole world in itself, and it can be different every time. It's so stimulating, and it really stimulates also your creativity. So once you've gone beyond that step, that you actually take this book and you go along with it, I feel it's just a marvelous experience, which is much, much better than watching a TV show.
That's actually so true, and this actually reminds me, Birgit, my very close dear friend of mine. We used to do this, that we would read the same book at not like at the same time, but at the same time, but maybe not at the same place or space. So she would read her book, and I would read mine, and at the end, or maybe sometimes even in the middle of the book, we would just exchange notes. And I remember doing this with Elif Shafak's book, 40 Rules of Love. And at the end of it, we were so mesmerized by the whole concept that myself and my very dear friend, she, both of us, we couldn't read another book for the coming 3 months. And yes, by exchanging notes, we actually identified that she was looking at a different prospect of the book, and I was looking at a completely different, entirely completely different view of it altogether. So you are so right about this, because when it is there are new vistas and new windows that open, and so definitely people, they have their imagination, they think differently, so new views pop up, and it's altogether a really amazing experience. And I think people should be doing this, that they should be exchanging notes as well. I'm sorry, Birgit, I'll have to take this question in by Ariba. She wants to ask you something, please. She says, I've heard that Germany is one of those countries where education is free for everyone, and the state bears all the expenses of students. What opportunities are there for Pakistani students? Okay, this question is a little deviated from the topic, Ariba says, but if you can please take this question. I'll be thankful to you. So she's saying it to me, but I want that if there is a possibility for her, you've heard the question. If you want, I can actually share this on the window and you can go through this. This is Ariba, and she's saying that I've heard the Germany, please. So if you would like to answer this question.
Well, you're right that public education is free in the sense that you don't pay tuition fees. But of course, that doesn't mean that this is the whole thing that education is about. Because even nowadays, for normal school children, you still need to buy books. You still need to buy some material that you need for your courses, and that's of course not included. So what's included is you go to school, you have a decent classroom, you have a qualified teacher, the curriculum and all of that, but not necessarily the teaching material. The same holds true for public universities, but now there are also increasingly private universities, or also in the public universities, some courses which are run like private profit centers. And then after a certain qualification onwards, you would need to pay tuition fees as well. Okay. But of course, you have to comply with the competitive entrance requirements. You need to have your A-level scores or the equivalent which is needed. Depending on the course you would like to study, you need to prove that you speak German well enough to follow the course. And I mean, speaking a foreign language in a way that you can actually study at an academic level is already quite challenging. Germany has an increasing number of courses which are also now taught in English, which I feel is a great advantage now and a great improvement. But still, Then there's the issue, how do you pay for your room, your hall of residence? You need food. And that's something that people and parents pay for their children. And very often it's not possible that you live in your parents' home because there is no university in your town. Or maybe you would like to study medicine, but the closest university doesn't have a medical school. So you need to live in a different city, and then you need to pay for a room in a flat, for a hall of residence. You need to eat, and that's already quite a lot of money. So even middle class families who do not have to pay tuition fees still have to come up for, let's say, the normal costs of living for their children, which is still something that you need to take in mind. And otherwise, of course, there are institutions like DAAD, which is the German Academic Exchange Service, which also offers stipends. And then you would need to contact them. Maybe the easiest way would be through the German embassy to ask them to put you in contact and apply for a scholarship. And yeah, good luck with it.
Okay, yes, I've personally heard about the DAD scholarships. They're very good. And if people want to apply for those, yes, it's a very good option. I personally thought that those options, only the single restraint is going to be the language barrier, because then in that case, you need to be very proficient with German language, because then you have to be, you'd be hiring a score so that you're able to communicate with people. So yes, I think that's an awesome, that's an awesome approach. But the scholarship is there, so I think that's going to be really helpful for people who are good with languages. This might just be the answer. Okay, so this was just, I'm sorry, Birgit, it was just off off track a bit, but because she requested, so I wanted that you should answer her. Okay, Birgit, so I would go back to, I know that your master's degree is in, it's in applied linguistics. And I would just like to know, okay, first of all, let's have it from you, if you can share the topic that you actually chose for your thesis, because maybe I can have a question or two from there, if you're comfortable with that.
Well, actually, my thesis, that was already quite a while ago, was quite political. I was doing a media analysis on American and Middle Eastern journals on the first Gulf War in the Middle East. So I analyzed, let's say, the narrative in the American news magazine Time. And there's an Egyptian magazine, an English-speaking one, which is was called The Middle East. And then I analyzed the news reporting and the narrative and the framing of the Gulf War, the first Gulf War, in those two news magazines to structure how actually you create stereotypes, how you frame a political issue, and discuss the differences.
Okay, so that's brilliant. Basically, it's a very different thing as come to see applied linguistics has its own role, and you've connected it with the Gulf War and how the implications have come forward. So tell us, Birgit, was it worth a research? I see that libraries, okay, first of all, I would like to appreciate that you've said that Germany has a lot of libraries and every school has a library. Unfortunately, Birgit, because we've done the research ourselves, Read Pakistan has done quite a number of researches on this, and unfortunately we couldn't find the right kind of number in Pakistan. To bring it in a gist, I would just say that I could just find one library in the whole of Balochistan. So it was a whole province, and it has one library. So basic, and well, to add on to that, even that is probably we couldn't find the physical presence of that library. And I'm also talking about, Birgit, that there are a lot of schools, definitely the government schools, and they do not have libraries. So I mean, overall, what I'm trying to say is that it's just not about one province or the other, but we just don't have the right kind of number that is required. So keeping that thing in mind, Birgit, what do you think? How can we establish a set of libraries, or how can we, facilitate, Pakistan and also the people when it comes to, sort of establishing libraries?
I think there's a lot of effort, of course, involved in this, and you're doing already a great effort. Just using the same example that you have about Baluchistan, I mean, this is also in terms of geographical size, it's the biggest province, but it's the least populated one. And although by no means I would like to compare Germany in that respect, but also in the rural areas, we do have more difficulties than in the urban or metropolitan areas, of course. And for example, in the large areas of eastern Germany, which are very rural with small towns and villages, then it's also difficult for a small town or a village to have a library. But still, there's this one thing without us. Books are considered to be public goods, educational goods, which promote our culture. So government and educational institutions take a lot of effort to promote books. And for example, if one of these rural districts cannot have a physical library in the provincial capital, or it's inaccessible for a lot of people who live in the countryside, there are some areas where there's a library bus. So you have a truck which has, let's say, the most popular books on board, and then they drive from one village to another village, and they distribute the books, and those people who have finished their books, they return the old books, and so they move on. And even if someone would like to read a book which is, let's say, a bit more exotic, or maybe it's a scientific book which is not so popular, you can order it, and through a network of library systems, you might wait a bit, maybe even a few weeks, but then the book might be sent to you from a library which is in the north and you live in the south. And you get it, and after 4 weeks, you would need to return it to your library, and then it's sent back to the library where it originally came from. So I feel, yes, it's an effort that should be taken by educational institutions, cultural institutions, and of course individuals. So everybody who really likes reading, he can also contribute. The first thing is, of course, in your family, with your friends, but you can, just like what you did, maybe you have a readers group somewhere. You meet up with friends, you read a book, and then you discuss it, and you'll be amazed how many different views on the same book you might have. And I think also the social media can help you a lot. So if you have ebooks, which are of course not so nice to read and to touch, I think reading a book also, for me, it's still like having a book, something in my hand. But it can give you also access to books which you cannot buy, afford, or for whatever reasons. But I feel there is an educational effort that needs to be done. And I would also say educational institutions should make an effort, and educators in general, everybody who feels that education is an important field that he would like to, or she would like to get active in, to actually promote it. Because it's very seldom that a person just comes across a book, grabs it, and then you become an avid reader. It's normally through your family, through education. You see it and then you do it. So yeah, it's something that needs to be promoted, definitely. Yeah. So you need to get stakeholders involved. So as we say, so um, schools, government, artists, writers, journalists, media people. There's a lot that you can do about it.
And that's so true. Birgit, that the point that you've raised is like really amazing. Ebooks and hard copies. Usually when people come to us, they also ask us what is more important, hard copy or an ebook. And I tell them my opinion, of course, because both the genres are as important as the other. But please share with us your views about having a hard copy or having an ebook, and how they are sort of important in their own ways, or you think that one of them is less important now in this advanced time. So, share your views on that, please, as well.
Well, I think the ebooks, that's the latest development. It gives books a greater outreach, and as well, if you would like to read a lot, like for example, when I go on holiday, instead of having a whole sports bag full of heavy books, you get maybe your iPad and you have a subscription to ebooks, which actually helps you to reduce the weight that you need to carry. And you have access to a whole library and you can read at your own pace. So I feel it's a very good opportunity. And wherever you have the connectivity or the possibility to download the books, it gives you enormous access to lots of different books. At the same time, it depends a bit how you read and what you read. I still wouldn't discard the hard copy, and especially when it comes to scientific or documentary type of books. At least personally, I like to read with a pen. I like to make comments. I underline an important part. Of course, you can also have this. You have these annotate functions in ebooks as well, but still, it's not the same thing. And so, and for me personally, I still like to read from paper and not from a screen. So maybe now in these COVID times, since we are also all not able to read, and everything is just reduced to a little screen, and reading and watching something digitally, it strains your eyes. So I think this is not just an issue for me. We've all seen that also, the so-called digital natives. So, but that's a personal thing. So I wouldn't say one is better than the others. I use both, and I feel it depends on your situation what you prefer. At least for my holidays, having ebooks is definitely an advantage.
That is so true, because I even, ebooks and then audiobooks and the hard copies are just so romantic. This is what I personally feel about hard copies. But other than that, really audiobooks have really helped me out as well. Birgit, we've got Sabah Kamal here, and the question I'm going to show on the screen, please. She is saying that all mothers cannot be proficient and subsequently successful in creating that imagination while reading something to younger children or younger kids. How can this be made more interesting, especially right before sleeping, while reading to them? And that in dark as well. What does that mean, Sabah? But anyhow, so the question's on the screen, and if you want to please answer to that.
Well, of course, it doesn't have to be the mum or the dad who reads out to the children going to bed. In my case, it was like that, and I immensely enjoyed it that my mum and my dad would take it in turns. And also, my mum would prefer different stories from what my dad would read to me. But I also had friends where it was more like the classic thing that the grandparents did,
Oh.
because they were sort of the born storytellers. They had the fairy tales. Maybe they also told stories from
Yeah.
their youth, and it was like an exciting, a different world, long past. So it should be a person who feels comfortable with it and who likes to do it. And if mom is not a savvy reader, maybe dad is, or maybe an older sister or an older brother is. So it can be this as well. Um, I had friends where, especially the younger siblings, learned already reading before they actually went to school, because they were sort of competing with the elder sister or brother, and they started reading what they had to read because they wanted to be bigger and older and already grown up.
Mhm.
So they did that, and it needs to work out for you. But I feel there are also quite a lot of good materials that you can use. And there are beautiful children's books that also have lots of drawings, paintings, pictures in it. And maybe it's not reading. Maybe you can just sit together and look at a picture and try to discuss what you see, or you have a picture story, or you make something up together and just let your imagination flow. I think there is a lot you can do in that respect. And maybe if you have a dedicated teacher of your children, or you ask other parents how to do it, um, there are lots of beautiful ways of doing it. And what I personally also liked, I don't know whether this is still or is a thing that you have here in Pakistan.
Okay.
These are like little role plays, or maybe you have, there are also like records or tapes with children's stories. And maybe if you're not so good to read it yourself, but you might get one of these tapes. And very often there are very gifted singers or actors who are beautiful readers. I mean, readers who read aloud, and they
Yeah.
really make a whole acting class out of it.
Yes.
And
Nice.
it's beautiful to have that. Maybe you get one of these records, tapes, or look for it on as a podcast. This is all available today, and you just try to familiarize your kids with these stories, and later on, when they are old enough to read it for themselves, you just say, look, this is the book, which you already know. You know the stories because you heard the record or the podcast. So I think, yeah, the social media can also help you in that. It's not that they
Yeah.
are competition. I think they are complementary to a book.
So true, and you've got so many tools that can actually, just make you a good reader. We've got Amna here, and let me show you the question that she's just asked you, Birgit. So I'm going to show this over here. Amna says, although income and education are directly proportional to each other, unfortunately, but mindsets can change. And as you yourself said, that the majority of Pakistanis are youngsters and can revolutionize if guided properly. So, what kind of measures should be taken, or what strategies should be followed to promote and inculcate reading in this era of digital world? And do you think that Pakistan as a country is advertised reading the way it should be? I think it's advertising reading the way it should be. So, Birgit, did you get the whole gist of the question?
Yes, I hope so. And if there's still something left, please bug me again. That's not a problem.
Okay.
Um,
Yes.
of course, yes, education and income play a role because you're very much influenced by your family. And if you, of course, you are lucky and you are born into a family of book readers, of educated people who cherish reading, you have a head start. So in that respect, I was born into a house full of books with parents who are book readers. That definitely gave me a head start. But it doesn't mean that others who don't have that opportunity should be excluded or need to be excluded from it. I think in that respect, the education system, school plays an important role in this, but also the media, because this is also, you will listen to the radio, the TV. I've just today read a media analysis that the most popular medium here in Pakistan is actually TV. So even there, you could have programs or sessions on books. You could have reading circles, people discussing books for children, for adults. Make it exciting or even make it interactive, that you promote a certain book and then people can phone in, can discuss and see how people do that. So there are lots of things that you can actually do about it. And in that respect, I feel, yeah, I think you cannot do enough to promote books, but you also should ensure that people then have access to them. I mean, it's not only enough to have maybe a reader's circle on a TV show, and then maybe hundreds of young people are passionate and would like to read the books, and they cannot get hold of it because there is no bookshop nearby, there is no library where they can borrow a book, and they cannot afford it to buy. And by the way, no bookshop anyway. So this is not what really helps you in that way. But I feel young people are interested in having books. That's at least my experience when I interacted with university students, no matter whether they were from public or from private universities. I even felt students at public universities much more committed and somehow more curious about books, and they were really craving to have a book. While I suppose those who attend private universities, they have, let's say, a different economic background, and they can buy the books that they would like to have. So I felt, yes, people would like to have them, but then you also need to develop the habit
Yes.
of reading books. So this is something that maybe your friends, that a teacher, that maybe an influencer, like an important writer, an actor, maybe a YouTuber, yeah, should take up. And I mean, I think the person who really brought a whole generation of young people back to reading all over the world was J.K. Rowling with her Harry Potter series.
Oh, yes.
Um, um, that was already when I was not, let's say, the main target group of these books anymore. But I enjoyed reading them several times. I have them behind me in my study. And I think it brought millions of young people who before that had only maybe watched movies and thought that books were boring, brought back to reading. And suddenly there was something exciting for them to read about topics and written in the way that they felt enthusiastic about. And that's also something, it needs to be a topic that is exciting for young people, and it needs to be inspiring. It shouldn't be maybe some boring book which might be of great interest to someone in academia, but doesn't have a good relationship with the realities that young people have. So it should be something that they feel special about. It should be about them. It should be about their life. And it should also be good fun to read. It should be exciting. And if it's entertaining, that's good. So it shouldn't be like too much, let's say, just educational. I mean, books are educational, but if it's just meant to pass an exam, to read a book, but it's not good fun, it's not entertaining, you're not enjoying it, then you're probably never going to touch a book again. So, yeah, I think it needs to be promoted. You need to have role models. The media should take a stance in that, but you should have initiatives like the one that here in Pakistan does, but you need allies, and the schools should be allies. Maybe you should also encourage and motivate teachers, because they are the ones to groom the young generation, to give them some ideas how you can inspire reading. Reading clubs in universities and schools, and there are loads of things that you can do about it.
So,
Yeah.
so true, Birgit, because I think this is really, it's really important that, you're so right. While you were saying that you should not have boring books and everything. And what was coming to my mind academically, a dictionary is so important, and you don't want to ever go through it. I mean, like really never. So yeah, it's so important, and yet. So yes, this is such a fabulous thing that you've just said, that you need to develop a connection, and that connection can never come in if the book is not interesting or if it doesn't show your own personality. I agree. This is a very interesting thing that somebody just wrote here. Hira Iqbal just wrote that. But now children watch Harry Potter movies, and she's writing her own opinion, saying that I don't want to read books. But Hira, well, just a small thing, and quickly I would just answer this. Hira, it's good that you watch movies because they're going to help you instigate the imagination. But reading a book, like Birgit said just a while ago, that this will give you, it will not stop your imagination, rather, it will make it go in diverse directions, and it will be polished in a very different way. Different people read books and make a different opinion. One thing that I'm going to take it up, Birgit, there's a question from Amna Ijaz, and let me show this question on the screen. It goes like, I think that we as youngsters are more gravitated towards Instagram than just picking up a book and reading it, even if we haven't access to it. Well, this is so true. I totally agree with all that you said in regard, but how should we ignite the spark just as Harry Potter did? Oh, that's nice. It's a good question. Amna.
Well, I think if you read on Instagram, you're reading as well. But it's a combination, of course, of visuals, and normally it's shorter text. It's very popular with young people. But for example, one of the blogs on Instagram which I love and I also enjoy reading is Humans of New York, and that's a series of blogs on ordinary people. Sometimes it's anonymous, sometimes they show their names, who share lucky events or tragedies or traumas, which then tell you, yeah, that's real life, and very often you find yourself in it. And some of these Instagram stories are actually quite long, but I'm glued to it and I read it. And if that's reading for you, that's fine. I mean, that's your way of doing it. And I also feel, if we say books need to be exciting, they can also be visual. You can have comics. They can be shorter. You don't just have to have the black and white scribbled thing without anything visual in it. And nowadays, that's fine. And I think literally the magic of Harry Potter was that it was about school life. It was set in a completely crazy environment like the wizard's world, but at the same time, it was also very real for a lot of us because we could find our own school stories in it. There were
Yes.
horrible teachers, there were lovely teachers, there were funny things, cheeky things that the students did outside of school. And there was an adventure story behind it with everything that makes it really very exciting. So that was a very craftful way of designing a book. And if you read it, there was also later on again, there's a lot of wisdom and there's also a lot of knowledge in it. And actually, it's also very political. So in certain parts, you see there's this horrible reporter of a yellow press, Rita Skeeter, in it, who writes horrible stories about Harry Potter. There are politicians. There's the Ministry of Magic in it that does all kinds of political things. So there's also something that you can relate to, and in a way, it's made special because you have this very weird magic world around it. But in fact, the basic story is not that magic. You can relate to it. And that takes a very gifted writer, but they are out there and they are also among ourselves like humans of New York. And you see some tweets or Twitter stories that go viral and they're not longer than 144 characters. But still they tell you something that moves you. So that's okay. Stay with Instagram if Instagram is fine for you. Maybe it makes you curious about going on to read some longer stories. And yeah, that's fine. And I feel also there are lots of stories and hopes in young people. And you have your hopes, your aspirations, and you already have your experience and your history here that you can share as well. And there's a lot of creativity among young people. So why not do it yourself? Start a writing, start a reading club, discuss these things with your friends. There's a lot that can come out of it.
That's so true, writing and reading, and you've touched on such a sensitive topic, Birgit, but we're simply out of time now, unfortunately. But this thing we're going to take up in the next session because we're also going to have a sort of string of sessions that in which we are going to discuss writing and reading. So I want you to be there in those sessions as well. And so now the kind of time that I requested from you, Birgit, is up. And thank you so very much for being here. Everyone, thank you very much. Everybody is appreciating you, Birgit, a lot. Hira is appreciating. Amna has just thanked you for replying to her questions. Shehzad is appreciating. Zimul is saying thank you very much. We have Noor saying that, yes, I love reading and so on. And so a lot of people over here, they've just thanked you for being in the session, and also they're appreciating you a lot. And this, regarding this session, that how good it has been. But fortunately, they got to know a few things, and unfortunately, we couldn't discuss a lot of questions. But I've tried the maximum number of questions that I could take from here. What we can do, Birgit, is that we can set up another time and another date and have a sequel of this, including that writing habits or writing something down, how this can be related with your imagination and reading. So, Birgit, thank you so very much. Whoever was watching us should also know that Birgit is a dear friend. She's a wonderful lady, always there for everybody who's doing something for the society. She's always standing out for serving back to community. She joined FNF in 1993 in Germany, and since then, like I shared with you before that she has held various positions, mashallah, within the foundation in Germany and also internationally. That is the reason why she's here in Pakistan. And among other things, she has served as also the director of the International Academy for Leadership, which is an amazing thing. I really wanted to ask a few questions about how to inculcate the spirit of leadership in people and how they can take up things. But definitely, we're going to do this some other time. Adding to this, Birgit's education is extraordinary and extravagant. She's done her master's in applied linguistics, and I'm sorry that we didn't have much time, Birgit, to talk about that, but that I'm definitely going to include also in the next session. So thank you very much, Birgit, for extracting time out for us and for Read Pakistan. Thank you for being such a dear friend. You've always been there. We appreciate how humble you are and how nicely you always stand by our side. God bless you. Thank you very much, Birgit. Take care.
Thank you for having me, and good luck with your next program.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.